I'm really excited to share my first iceberg video with you all. I wanted to do something that was interesting but hadn't been done a million times, since the whole iceberg format has been kind of overdone to death. I wanted to give you guys something unique, so today I'll be going over the Optical Illusions iceberg. This iceberg is made by u/Lindsay889, so thank you for making this and thanks for giving me permission to use it. I put a link in the description to the original Reddit post, so go check that out to see the full chart. Just to test the waters, this video will just be the first tier, and if this video does well, I'll go tier by tier for the sake of giving you all content more regularly. When we finish the iceberg, I can edit all the parts together and release a complete video for it. Thank you for watching. The checker shadow illusion is a visual illusion created by MIT visual science professor Edward H. Adelson in 1995. It shows a checkerboard with a cylinder projecting a shadow onto part of the board. There is a clearly darker square outside the shadow labeled A, and a clearly lighter square inside the shadow labeled B. But if you connect the two squares, they're exactly the same color. This is because our brains understand that there's a shadow and assume that a color inside the shadow is lighter than it is, because our brains automatically take into account that the shadow would darken the color. This is known as a contrast illusion because it works based on the way our brains understand context behind certain visual effects. In this case, how shadows change the shades of things within them. The Muller-Lyer illusion is a visual illusion that consists of two lines. One line has arrows on the ends pointing out, and the other has arrows on the ends pointing in. The illusion is that the line with inward pointing arrows appears to be longer than the other line. This can be better understood in the context of a perspective drawing, where a line that's further away appears to be longer than a line that's closer to the viewer, but in reality both lines are the same size. Penrose stairs, otherwise known as impossible stairs, are visual illusions that were created by Oscar Reuterswärd in 1937. This illusion is related to a whole genre of illusions called impossible objects that we'll get into in later tiers. The Penrose stairs are a set of stairs that are constantly going in one direction, but connect to each other to form a cycle. The concept seems irrational, but actually relates to complex mathematical concepts like non-Euclidean geometry and nil geometry. The Ponzo illusion is another perspective illusion that I'll cover quickly because it's very similar to the Muller-Lyer illusion from earlier. It uses a set of train tracks to show how the brain assumes lines further away in your perspective are longer than lines closer to your view, even if the two lines are the same size. And that's about it for this one. The false spiral, otherwise known as the Fraser spiral illusion, is an illusion discovered by Sir James Fraser in 1908. The illusion utilizes offset shapes within circles to create the illusion of a spiral. There's a series of circles, but due to our brains rendering the bands of shapes within the circles manually, the brain sees a spiral where there is none. And this one is crazy trippy. If you just try to use your eyes to follow the spiral, you'll give yourself a headache in no time. This one's not really an illusion in the traditional sense, it's more just a neat little artistic trick. Which did you see first, the rabbit or the duck? Ambiguous images are drawings that, when first viewed, can appear as different things to different people. It may depend on a number of factors to achieve this trick, such as the angle you're viewing it from, or if you notice positive or negative space first. These images can be used in psychology, allegedly gauging your subconscious mind by seeing what image you perceive first. This one might be my favorite so far. Have you ever noticed that sometimes the moon looks a lot bigger than usual? Well, unsurprisingly, the moon isn't inflating like something on Pyrocynical's hard drive. If you measure the moon with a special instrument like a theodolite at its peak in the sky and at its lowest point on the horizon, it's the same size. But an apparent difference in size to the human eye has been noticed by people for millennia. The cause is still somewhat unknown, but the Greek astronomer Cleomenes, all the way back in 200 BCE, theorized that the illusion is due to something called the apparent distance hypothesis. When the moon is at its peak in the sky, our brain has trouble gauging its distance due to the isolation with nothing around it, so it looks smaller. When it's at the horizon and visually close to mountains, trees, buildings, or other objects, our brains use those objects and assume the moon is much closer and larger than it previously was. This one's also kind of general, and it goes into more specifics in other parts of the iceberg, so I'll keep it brief and general for this. A mirage is a general term that relates to the refraction of light creating many different illusions. One of the most common is heat haze, when you look across a long distance on a hot day and see everything kind of wiggling, or on a road when you see what looks like a puddle but it disappears as you get closer to it. Another example of a mirage is when you look through a glass of water and see everything warped on the other side. The general takeaway is that light can bend in ways we wouldn't expect in the right conditions. The dress, for you youngins out there, was an internet sensation back in the early 2010s. The original picture was of a dress in sunlight, but the effect of the sunlight made some people perceive it as a white dress with gold accents, while other people saw it as a blue dress with black accents. The actual dress was black and blue, and anyone who said otherwise was definitely just doing it for attention, but the reasoning behind the debate relates back to the idea of our brains understanding the context of an image. If your brain understood that bright lights warped the original color, you were more likely to see the dress as black and blue. Otherwise, you would wrongly think it was white and gold. This one is crazy, and I've never even heard of it before. Take a look at this gif of a woman spinning. I'll leave it on screen while I explain it. Is she spinning clockwise, or is she spinning counterclockwise? I think most people looking at it will say clockwise. Now focus really hard on making her spin the opposite direction, and you might just be able to. When I first saw the gif, I thought she was spinning clockwise, and I couldn't get myself to see it the other way. Then suddenly while I was staring at it, she turned the other way, and I couldn't stop seeing it as counterclockwise. It's some really trippy stuff. The illusion is due to the fact that the woman is a silhouette lacking depth. If you could see more of her features and shading, it would be easy to figure out which way she's turning. But without depth, the photo borders on being 2D in our mind, and our brains can interpret it in different ways. The way we interpret it can be based on a multitude of different things, including our subconscious and even our dominant hands. Forced perspective is a trick everyone has seen before, either in photography or maybe films. Ever seen somebody holding up the Leaning Tower of Pisa? We know that the tower is ginormous, but when your uncle's holding it up with his hands in the family picture, it looks roughly his size. That's because the way the picture was taken makes it look a certain way. Another example of forced perspective is this. Think of two lasers shot into space parallel with each other. What would it look like from the surface of Earth? Well, it looks like this. It appears as though they eventually touch, but in reality they go on forever without ever getting closer to each other. This one's a bit hard to explain. Did you ever have one of those hologram toys as a kid, where if you put a small object into the little dish that had mirrors on the inside, the thing would appear as a hologram over the top of the dish? That's basically what this illusion is. Due to the way light reflects off of mirrored surfaces, we can create visual holograms. In the case of that little toy, there's nowhere to go but on the top for light due to mirrors on the inside. Therefore, the full projection of the object appears on the top of the toy. The name Pepper's Ghost comes from its use in stage plays in the early 1900s and late 1800s using mirrors and a person on the bottom of the stage. The gravity hill illusion can cause objects to act seemingly against gravity. A ball will seemingly roll uphill. There's a number of gravity hills or magnetic hills all over the US where the illusion takes place. The trick is actually pretty simple. The surrounding landscape, along with a blocked horizon, will confuse the brain on which way is up, and I can imagine the experience is pretty jarring. Imagine falling uphill. If I had $1 for every time I mentioned the Leaning Tower of Pisa in one video, I'd have $2, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice. When you put these two pictures together of the Leaning Tower side by side, the right one looks like it's leaning further, right? Probably because the right photo is from a different perspective. Nope, the photos are exactly the same. Apparently, this illusion is due to the way our brain automatically corrects perspective differences in our vision. Since the two towers run in parallel, our brain miscorrects itself and sees them as being angled differently. I'm honestly pretty unimpressed by this one. Here's a photo of some inconspicuous coffee beans. There definitely isn't a guy's face poking out somewhere. Did you find him? It's basically a Where's Waldo puzzle, but instead of Waldo, it's some little freak hiding in my coffee beans. The barber pole illusion is just another illusion that exposes how doggy-doo-doo our brains are sometimes. This barber pole is rotating horizontally, of course, but our brain refuses to understand that the whole pole is rotating, and only follows the stripes individually, so it thinks that these stripes are moving downwards and to the right. Like, bro, how are you so incredible at things, and then you get completely stumped by a barber pole? This is embarrassing. Pareidolia, meaning something like secondary image or after image in Greek, is less of an illusion and more of a fun little quirk about humans and the way they see and process things. For the most part, it's the way we can see recognizable things, like faces for instance, in completely unrelated objects. Like how the fronts of cars look like little faces, or really the whole concept of cloud watching since you're perceiving recognizable shapes in the abstract clouds. This is also used in psychology in the form of Rorschach paintings, where you identify recognizable things in an abstract shape to reflect your subconscious mind.
Well, that's it for tier 1. I want to thank you Lindsay889 one more time for creating this iceberg. I also want to thank everyone that gave me so much love and support in the comments of my last video. Thank you. Sorry if that one was a bit boring or if you knew most of these illusions, but the next tiers have some crazy ones. I tried to choose an iceberg chart that was pretty unique so the video wouldn't feel unoriginal. So let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you for watching.